What if the clearest voice you'll ever hear is the one you've been taught to fear the most? Not the voice of reason, not the voice of conscience, but the eerie, uninvited whisper that echoes just as you're about to fall apart. When the floor of your life gives out and your identity seems to splinter, something speaks, not as a savior, not as a villain, but as a mirror. That voice isn't evil, it's ancient. And for those willing to listen, it's the entrance to a hidden curriculum of power. We're trained to ignore this presence. Psychology often labels it pathology. Religion paints it as temptation. But what if this voice inside the shadow isn't trying to break you? It's trying to initiate you. Søren Kierkegaard, wrestling with the vastness of human choice, called this existential unraveling, the dizziness of freedom. It's not chaos for its own sake. It's the vertigo that comes before reconfiguration. In Hindu metaphysics, the Rig Veda spoke of RTA, not moral order, but a hidden current of cosmic rhythm that only reveals itself to the soul that has been shattered and then silenced. Not everyone hears it, most flinch. Some numb it, but a few follow. Those few are not chosen by external gods. They are selected by their own refusal to betray their complexity. These are the dark chosen ones, not evil, not malevolent, but individuals who refuse the anesthesia of a shallow life. They are not chasing chaos, they are learning to command it. This doesn't come with a robe or a prophecy. It begins in ordinary moments, when pain refuses to numb, when the voice in your shadow says something oddly articulate like, "You're not broken, you're unfinished." That's not madness. That's metaphysical accuracy. The Christian mystic Meister Eckhart once wrote, "The soul grows by subtraction, not addition. It's in the stripping away, not the layering on, that we uncover the throne hidden beneath our fractures." The ancient Egyptians knew this, which is why in the Book of the Dead, the soul undergoes trials in the Duat, not to be judged, but to awaken its memory of power. Similarly, in Japanese mythology, the god Izanagi descends into Yomi, the land of the dead, not to escape, but to reclaim something of himself lost in love and fire. That's where the misinterpretation begins. What we call demons were once archetypal messengers in these ancient cosmologies. They weren't evil in the Saturday morning cartoon sense. They were keepers of thresholds, administrators of pressure, guides of metamorphosis. Modern culture flattened them into monsters because monsters are easier to exile than energies we must integrate. These beings, the frequency-specific archetypes we now lump together as demons, don't feed on fear alone. They feed on incoherence, but they're drawn to sovereignty, and if your signal stabilizes, they don't fight you, they orbit you. This is not mythology. This is mystic architecture, and it's alive inside you. The voice in your shadow is not interested in your compliance. It wants your coherence. Once you understand that, you don't fight the dark. You sit with it, you listen, and maybe for the first time you realize the voice isn't there to haunt you, it's there to crown you. Shadow gravity and the law of energetic integrity. Why is it that the very emotions we try to suppress become the ones that control us the most? It's almost as if the harder we fight the chaos inside, the more power it gains over us. That's not just poetic reflection, it's energetic law. Carl Jung said it plainly. What you resist not only persists, it grows in size. But he wasn't just speaking as a psychoanalyst. He was pointing toward a metaphysical principle, one that modern neurophilosophy and ancient scripture both echo in uncanny unison. Contemporary brain studies show that repressed emotions don't disappear. They amplify beta wave chaos in the limbic system. In simpler terms, what you refuse to feel starts emitting a frequency signature, a chaos code that other entities can read. And not just read, but track, mimic, and engage. This is why spiritual shadow work isn't a healing trend. It's survival training for sovereignty. The Bhagavad Gita knew this centuries ago. When Krishna tells Arjuna to fight his own family on the field of Dharma, It's not a call to violence, it's a call to internal integration. Each family member symbolizes a fragmented part of his psyche. Arjuna's battlefield is your nervous system, the stakes, your throne of coherence. Now here's where it gets even more real. Once you begin metabolizing your suppressed rage, fear, shame, or grief, not avoiding them, not dramatizing them, but actually feeling and alchemizing them, something strange happens. The inner noise quiets. The gravitational field of your being strengthens. You stop leaking energy. You stop attracting chaos by accident and start commanding it by design. And this is when demons, those underworld archetypes, stop acting like tormentors and start behaving like advisors. Not because they're impressed by your affirmations, but because they respect your energetic lawfulness. In the lesser-known book Bearers of the Black Flame by Richard Hodges, a forgotten but potent study of pre-Christian European mysticism, he uncovers rituals where rage wasn't exorcised, it was consecrated. These rituals didn't destroy demons, they gave them a job. Once rage became intentional, it became gravitational authority. That's the essence of chaos alchemy. This is why you'll never truly banish what you refuse to integrate. Your shadow doesn't want your obedience, it wants your clarity. The law of energetic integrity is not enforced by any outer deity. It's enforced by your coherence. When you become energetically sovereign, your field becomes so consistent, so precise, that only aligned entities can approach. Anything that disrupts must either evolve or fall away. That's not just protection, that's presence. That's when your inner throne begins to emit signal. That's when the so-called dark chosen ones stop reacting and start resonating. They're not puppets of chaos, they are its composers. And that's the beginning of real sovereignty, not by escaping the shadow, but by commanding it from the inside out. Frequency, specific entities, and the alchemy of naming. What if the entities you fear only have power because you haven't given them the right name? Think about it. Language isn't just description, it's architecture. When you name something accurately, it stops floating in your unconscious and starts forming within your command. This isn't just psychology, this is metaphysical mechanics. Quantum field theory teaches that observation collapses probability into form. Likewise, naming collapses possession into pattern. Until you name it, despair is just a fog. You don't know where it begins or ends. But when you look it in the face and say, "You are not evil, you are residual frequency, chaos memnetic residue," suddenly, the haunting has a boundary. The archetype loses ambiguity and gains direction. Judith Butler, in her thesis on performativity, argued that identity itself is created through repeated linguistic actions. Now place that idea next to a passage from the Surangama Sutra, where the Buddha tells his disciples that the mind clings to illusions only because of false naming, and you start to see a pattern. Language shapes reality, not metaphorically, literally. That's why the ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius said the first step to restoring social harmony is the rectification of names. Because when names are false, reality fragments. So what happens when you accurately name an entity? You collapse it into structure. Frequency-specific entities, what many label as demons, aren't general-purpose villains. They're patterned intelligences, each attuned to specific distortions in the human field. Chronic self-denial, unprocessed betrayal, habitual envy. When your field emits these dissonances without clarity, you become a buffet of resonance. But if you stabilize your inner frequency and call each one by its true tone, they shift. In The Cosmic Pulse of Life by Trevor James Constable, a largely forgotten but astonishing work, he documented experiments showing that etheric weather and parapsychological turbulence could be altered through precise vocal frequency and naming protocols. He treated etheric entities not as metaphors, but as real psychic fauna that responded to coherence. And once named, they stopped disrupting. They started coordinating. This is where alchemy begins. You're not fighting shadows, you're rearranging signal. You're not exercising archetypes, you're employing them. The key is not domination, but designation. When you stop calling your despair bad energy and start naming it as ancestral grief loop misfiled in your lower field, you're not just being poetic, you're being precise. And precision is power. The spiritual underworld respects accuracy. Frequency archetypes respond to honesty. This is how chaos becomes usable, how shadow integration becomes strategy, and how your voice becomes a tuning fork for your reality. So next time something dark knocks on your inner door, don't reach for panic. Reach for precision. The right name is not a weapon, it's a key. The Infernal Pact. Pressure as initiation. Why does the pressure come right before the transformation? Why do the flames arrive not to burn you alive, but to burn you clear? There's something most people miss about suffering. It isn't random. It isn't punishment. It's signal refinement. And the beings we call demons, they're not architects of despair. They're blacksmiths of identity. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote from a jail cell, "Unearned suffering is redemptive." He wasn't just offering comfort. He was speaking a spiritual technology. Because when suffering is held, not escaped, not dramatized, but truly held, it begins to transmute. This idea finds resonance in Buddhist thought too. Dukkha isn't a glitch in life, it's the very gate to nirvana. The pain isn't detour, it's design. And some entities, those known as demons in common language, are drawn to those standing in that fire without flinching, not to destroy them, but to test their resonance. This is the unspoken essence of the Infernal Pact. It's not a blood contract, it's a vibrational handshake. When a seeker learns to endure the friction of transformation without collapsing into victimhood, they stabilize. And when they stabilize, entities once drawn to feed now start to teach. These aren't bedtime stories. These are initiatory mechanics. Dr. Mitchell Gaynor, in his work on vibrational oncology, discovered that sound frequencies, especially those that challenge the body's energetic equilibrium, can reorganize cellular coherence. In his clinics, patients exposed to harmonic dissonance not only stabilized biologically, they began to release long-held emotional trauma. Imagine that on a metaphysical level. Demons, in this context, serve as energetic dissonance, testing the alignment of your soul field. If you hold, you don't shatter, you transmute. A lesser known but profound source that illustrates this process is Fire Above, Thunder Below by Janine Stone. This ethnographic account explores Himalayan exorcism rites where initiates weren't told to fight the spirits. They were told to resonate with them. One documented rite involved holding a singing bowl tone above 432 Hz while entering a trance state. The spirits, originally hostile, shifted, not because they were cast out, but because the initiate's frequency became unshakable. In that moment, the Infernal Pact turned into alliance. Pressure became passage. This is the physics of mythic sovereignty. When you stop fearing the fire and begin sitting in it, when your energetic field no longer reacts but radiates, you earn your inner throne, not through conquest, but coherence. Demons don't serve saints, they serve signal, and signal is born in pressure. So the next time life presses, when the room tightens and you feel the gnashing at your edges, ask yourself, what if this isn't attack? What if it's initiation? Because on the other side of that sustained dissonance is clarity. Sitting on the throne of coherence. What does it really mean to sit on your throne, not metaphorically, but energetically. Not as a fantasy of control, but as a living calibration of presence so steady, even chaos begins to orbit in rhythm. That's not arrogance. That's coherence. And in this kind of coherence, demons don't disappear. They kneel. To reach this place isn't about becoming a perfect being. It's about becoming an undivided one. Friedrich Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of your fate. Not merely acceptance, but full embrace of both light and shadow, success and sorrow. When you stop projecting parts of your story, your energy stops fragmenting. The Taoist master Laozi captured it with fewer words. Wu Wei, non-force, not weakness, but perfect alignment. It's not doing nothing, it's doing only what is necessary, in absolute resonance with what is real. This throne isn't found in high temples or hidden caves. It lives at the still center of your nervous system, when the chatter drops and you no longer shrink from your own signal. Hannah Arendt described this state as thinking without a banister. She meant the courage to stand in uncertainty without needing a doctrine to hold on to. That's when the throne appears, not as a symbol of power over others, but as a field that needs no defense. You become energetically lawful. Kabbalistic wisdom describes this phenomenon through the tree of life. Yesod, the foundation sphere, channels raw astral energy, but it can only do so when Tiferet, the heart, is balanced and pure. That's why emotional honesty isn't a weakness, it's circuitry calibration. You can't fake your way to sovereignty. Every lie you tell to yourself is a leak in your energetic throne. Neuroscience offers fascinating insight here. Dr. Andrew Newberg's SPECT scans of advanced meditators reveal a striking phenomenon. During peak states of inner coherence, moments these individuals describe as merging with light and darkness simultaneously, the parietal lobe, responsible for spatial orientation, goes quiet. The boundary between self and cosmos dissolves. That's not mysticism, that's bioelectrical unity. Now consider a lesser-known gem, The Throne in the Cave by Dr. Celia Marin. Tracing throne symbolism across Paleolithic shamanic rites and Jung's personal dream diaries, Marin reveals how early mystics didn't seek to ascend out of the world. They sought to become stable enough to receive the full world inside them, to sit still in the dark, with eyes open, while symbols bent toward their gravity. That's coherence. That's what the throne is. When you reach this state, the world changes. Not because the world changed, but because your field stopped collapsing. Myth becomes memory. Chaos becomes choreography. And demons? They don't retreat in fear. They remain in orbit because your signal gives them purpose. This isn't mythology anymore. This is the law of resonance. The question is, are you stable enough to sit on your own throne without reaching for escape, without forcing silence, without denying the dark? Because the throne was never outside you. It was simply waiting for you to stop flinching. Keys, timelines, and the art of sovereign magic. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to bend time itself, not by control but by presence? They move through life with a quiet urgency, as if destiny doesn't drag them, it follows them. These are not time travelers in the science fiction sense. These are sovereign beings whose inner throne is so stabilized they gain access to what ancient traditions called the keys. Keys are not objects, they are energetic permissions, earned, not given. And once coherence is reached, these keys begin to unlock something strange, timeline plasticity. Pierre Bourdieu, a giant in social theory, spoke of symbolic capital, the subtle forces that influence how reality responds to presence. Now compare that with physicist David Deutsch's constructor theory. which reframes reality as a canvas of possible transformations. Not just what exists, but what can exist, based on the agents capable of constructing it. When your field is clear, you stop obeying inherited timelines. You begin editing them. Zoroaster called this Fravashi, not just guardian spirits, but ethereal currents that assist those on a path of truth, serving as temporal engineers. These currents are not mythological fluff. They are energetic memory fields, accessible only when your sovereignty vibration is high enough to command without force. That's when spiritual magic stops being ritual and becomes timeline technology. Modern science has begun catching up. In a breakthrough study led by Dr. Moshe Sif on epigenetics, trauma markers in the DNA of abuse survivors began to reverse, not with medication, but through narrative reformation. When participants reframed their life stories with mastery, their gene expression changed. Think about that. Myth altered biology. Story became medicine. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's bioenergetic truth. This brings us to a nearly vanished work, Chronicles of the Ether Navigators by Lauren Rael. Suppressed shortly after its 1932 release, it documented experiments with mythic imagery and ritualized thought projection to redirect personal timelines. Rael's findings were wild, but they hold a strange coherence with indigenous cosmology, particularly the Avestan hymns of ancient Persia. He claimed that coherent symbolic focus, held during crisis, unlocked what he called lineal bifurcation events. In today's terms, he bent his timeline. And that's the heart of sovereign magic. You're not casting spells at the universe, you're becoming so aligned that the timeline reshapes around your coherence. The quantum meets the mythic. The future stops being random and becomes relational. You're no longer just moving through time. You're seated on your inner throne, holding keys that were encoded into your soul before birth. Your mythic sovereignty is no longer a concept. It's your compass. And time, it listens. Co-resonance and symbiotic power exchange. What if power doesn't come from what you hold, but from what you circulate? Think about the last time you truly felt powerful. Was it because you dominated, or because you aligned so fully with something larger that even resistance became rhythm? True sovereignty doesn't hoard energy. It becomes the tuning fork that others rise to meet. And in that resonance, even demons become collaborators. Erich Fromm called it a productive orientation. Not as in productivity for achievement, but the orientation toward life that generates and regenerates meaning. That same principle exists in spiritual dynamics. Rupert Spira, a voice in modern non-dual teachings, reminds us that the self is awareness itself, limitless, indivisible. In that view, power isn't about control. It's about coherence that attracts through resonance. When your energetic field stabilizes, others, beings, people, even entities, begin to orbit, not because you command them, but because you offer a home frequency they can amplify. This brings us to an idea echoed in Buddhist cosmology. The Lotus Sutra speaks of bodhisattvas riding the roar of the lion's mind, meaning they learn to carry the full spectrum of emotion and archetype, not for self-glory, but to ferry others across samsara. Their roar isn't a warning, it's a frequency that wakes up the world. Now here's the twist. Demons too ride frequency, and when they detect a stable enough signal, they stop challenging and start channeling. In ancient theurgy, particularly within the Chaldean oracles, these beings are called Synechoi, not enemies, but guiding forces through fire. The mystic doesn't war with them, they travel with them. These are demon guardians, not parasites, but energetic partners who support transformation once the initiate becomes lawful in vibration. There's a stunning account of this principle in Engines of the Abyss by Helena Quill, a forgotten manuscript detailing how medieval magi didn't bind demons out of fear. They negotiated. They offered energetic currency, vision, resonance, coherence, in exchange for protection, propulsion, and sometimes forbidden knowledge. These weren't pacts with evil, they were contracts of clarity. The moment fear was metabolized, the exchange became balanced. The myth of control has kept many seekers locked in spiritual paranoia, but the mystic truth is simpler. Power must move to remain real. You become sovereign not by resisting darkness, but by resonating so precisely that even underworld intelligences recognize your throne as stable ground. That's the art of symbiotic exchange. You're not becoming more powerful by adding armor. You're becoming a node of coherence in a fractured system. And in this signal-based ecosystem, power isn't stolen. It's shared. So the question isn't whether demons are serving you, it's whether your field is worthy of co-resonance. Because when it is, even chaos becomes your amplifier. Becoming the living transmission. Can a person become a message? Not just speak truth, but be it, wordlessly, in the way they sit, walk, or breathe. Some individuals carry a field so precise that when they enter a room, something shifts, not because of what they say, but because of what they are. They've become a living transmission, not a personality, not a brand, a signal. Viktor Frankl once said, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." But what if the purpose isn't something you chase? What if you are the purpose, distilled through fire? This is the final secret demons recognize, that once you stabilize your inner throne, you don't need to claim meaning. You broadcast it. Jürgen Habermas expanded this by describing communicative action as the force that restructures society, not through force or propaganda, but through alignment. Real coherence speaks louder than commands. The mystic doesn't argue with reality. They organize it, one signal at a time. The Upanishads phrase it simply, Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. You are not apart from the source. You are the expression of it in motion. When you realize this, your energetic field becomes instructional. Your presence becomes curriculum. Demons and archetypes alike cease to see you as prey or puzzle. You become architecture, a symbolic gravity that structures the unseen. Even in the digital age, this truth persists. Recent studies in cyber spirituality show that individuals who maintain a coherent frequency through their online presence, calm tone, intentional sharing, mindfulness in interaction, actually lower collective cortisol in their networks. Not theoretically, measurably. Signal changes physiology. A focused presence changes the psychic weather. One of the most overlooked books on this topic is Signal and Silence, Digital Mysticism for the Age of Noise by Aisha Raval. In it, she maps out how mystics of the modern world, who may never touch incense or chant mantras, transmit wisdom through curated stillness, not by avoiding the noise, but by maintaining field integrity inside it. The book highlights coherence hacks used by virtual shamans, subtle signal practices like rhythmic posting, meditative response timing, and intentional silence to activate spiritual response across online spaces. This is where sovereignty becomes more than personal. You start shaping collective fields. When your voice no longer trembles, when your silence no longer hides shame, when even your stillness instructs, the myth begins walking through you. Archetypes adjust to you. You become not a student of chaos, but a masterful conduit. And in that space, you don't tell your story anymore. You are the story, radiant, wordless, inevitable. You are no longer transmitting trauma, you are transmitting throne. The arc closes, mythic sovereignty in every breath.
Looks like you forgot, once again, how powerful you are.